Pre-Eclampsia Awareness Month is this month in May, but many people don't know what that word means or how impactful it could be to a mother and a child during pregnancy. Joining me now is KPRC2 digital reporter Mariah Ballard for this very important discussion. Mariah, thank you so much for coming on the show this morning to have this conversation. Yes. I know it's a tough one to have, so we're going to proceed with caution and a lot of empathy. But for people who aren't familiar with this condition, what is it?
So preeclampsia basically, in my terms, would be high blood pressure that comes into effect during pregnancy. And so this is something that I had to deal with. This is why this day is so important to me, because my blood pressure levels got so high during my pregnancy, they thought that I was about to, go into a stroke or a seizure level. Unfortunately, as the people here at KPRC know, but many of our viewers don't know, this happened between my son and I, and we were just talking about it. I was diagnosed with preeclampsia at about 31 weeks, and everything after that was terrible. I was told that the only cure was death or delivery. And so I expected to be delivered within 24 hours. I went to a Sugar Land hospital. My mother-in-law at the time took me to a Sugar Land hospital, transported to the Texas Medical Center, one of the best medical centers in the world. And unfortunately, that was on a Thursday. That whole weekend, I was complaining about very severe pain and just a lot of uncomfortable things that are associated with preeclampsia, a situation that nobody had told me about beforehand. My doctor never told me that preeclampsia could have been a thing. I knew nothing to look for. And so I arrived at the Texas Medical Center. Instead of delivering me, the first doctor was like, call your parents. We're both from up north. I'm from Ohio. They're like, call your parents, tell them it's time. You're gonna have this baby in 24 hours. So I'm calling people. We're trying to get it together, getting ready for baby. I get to the Texas Medical Center, and the doctors there tried to keep me pregnant for a little bit of time. So it didn't really work out. That was on a Thursday. Sunday came, and unfortunately, more pain associated with the preeclampsia took place. I know that we're going to get into my story a little bit later in this conversation, but long story short, the preeclampsia ended up almost taking my life. It claimed the life of my son, and it's a very traumatic situation. The most traumatic thing about it, though, is that people don't know about it, and I wasn't aware of it. So I spoke with Dr. Tamika Cross of Opulence Health, who gave us the real textbook definition of what preeclampsia is. Dr. Cross, May is Preeclampsia Awareness Month. Tell us about the textbook definition of what preeclampsia means.
So preeclampsia is when you develop high blood pressure in pregnancy, typically with blood pressures greater than 140/90, as well as having protein in your urine or having other lab abnormalities.
Okay. And it seems like a lot of preeclampsia cases have been going undiagnosed, or they're diagnosed too late. Why is this not a bigger conversation about this disease and this illness?
It needs to be. It needs to be. It's definitely more prevalent in the African American and Hispanic community for sure. I think that as time goes on, you're hearing about more people being diagnosed with preeclampsia as we start to become more aware of it. But I think we need to do a better job as providers of letting patients know the warning signs, the early warning signs of preeclampsia, just so they can be looking out for these. Because if you've never heard of it, if you've never had pregnancy before, if you've never known anybody with it, you may not know to look for those things.
And for you, this was your first pregnancy.
For sure.
Your family's not around, right? Your family's up north. And that's not to say that they would have been able to identify it themselves. Because for so many, they don't know. They're unaware of this condition.
It's very interesting that you said that, because before this situation happened to me, I didn't know how many women in my family it had happened to. My Nana dealt with this. That's my grandmother.
Oh my goodness.
She actually has a burial plot for her son that passed away, but nobody talks about it in our communities. And back in the day, I think it was called something different, but it's the same. High blood pressure runs rampant among people of color anyways. And so when that pregnancy happens and your blood pressure is high, your body begins to reject your baby, your body begins to reject, the things needed to get you through that pregnancy successfully. But I didn't know. That's my biggest thing. That's why I'm trying to advocate now. There were no pamphlets in the doctor's office to talk about it. Nobody told me what this was, but people are losing their babies in the minority community at an astronomical rate. And so I mean, things could have been caught earlier. I did have that intense protein in my urine. I had bleeding. I was having severe headaches, fatigue, nausea. But I'm like, well, I've never been pregnant before, so this is just the name of the game here.
You chalk it up to be not a big deal.
Pregnant. Yeah, and I don't know anything. You know, I don't know how I'm supposed to be feeling. So that is a situation that happened, unfortunately, to me and my son Denham and my husband at the time. I know that he's watching. I wanted to talk about the mental anguish it actually has on the entire family, because this is something that I think about daily, and I'm going to try not to get emotional, Zach. I know we were over here crying because we are literally a family, and I'm just here to prevent this from happening to anybody else. I celebrate my son every day. You know, I see kids in the street. It's a beautiful thing, but that situation, the word preeclampsia rings in my head every single day. What could you have done better? They say now you can take a baby aspirin. You know, there's things to regulate your high blood pressure, but doctors are just not talking about it, and it's taking out moms and babies around the world. It happens in about 1 in 25 pregnancies.
Wow.
Yeah. In the United States, we're such a industrialized country, right?
Yeah.
We're the United States.
We're better than this.
We're bigger than everybody. We're better than everybody, but this is still happening. And maternal mortality overall, 3 times more likely, like you said, than our
time after time, we tell these stories of pregnant women within minority communities, marginalized communities, communities of color, when you know they feel something, they're listening to their bodies, they're listening to their intuition, and they're asking for help, and they are not being heard. Our system does not allow for them to be heard. And we have told so many of those stories right here. Women sharing this seat with you, coming on this show and telling us about similar experiences. And you know, what I love most about you is you take this pain and these experiences, and it really propels you to use your platform to help others. And I could not be more proud of you for doing this. No, it really is. It's amazing. And I know, you know, this is your first time getting out here and sharing this story, and it takes a lot of courage, but I know the purpose of that is to help others. And so we appreciate this conversation, especially on a day like today, but know that this work continues. It has to continue all year round, to be having these conversations, to reach these young women in all of these communities.
For sure, the Houston community definitely, and the communities at large. My full interview with Dr. Cross is up at click2houston.com, where we talk a little more about it, and she was also diagnosed with preeclampsia as a doctor, and they didn't take her seriously. So she did a little undercover boss thing in the hospital, and she realized that communities of color are really not taken seriously, because she put herself in that predicament. And so I was in that hospital, I was crying, you know, I was the highest risk patient on that floor, and my cries of pain still went unheard by nurses that were there to take care of me. So definitely listen to your body. As a minority woman, a black women in general, because this doesn't just happen to black women. Speak up for yourself. Like the doctor said, advocate, advocate, advocate for yourself. You can't advocate for yourself enough. So
this brings me back to a story I did probably 2 years ago at this point, and it was on the increased demand, women and families, men as well, seeking out doulas. To be that voice, to
I
be
have
that
to have one
advocate.
next time.
In addition to themselves, their significant other, their family members, but they seek out these professionals to be that voice, to be another sounding board for them during this time.
Because you guys know, I don't have a problem speaking my mind. I don't have a problem
Don't say.
You know, I don't have a problem advocating for myself at all. But in situations like this, where there's a power dynamic, I'm like, let me just listen to the doctor. And it's extremely hard. And like I said, the mental anguish, the backlash of it, myself, my child's father, my mother, we are all seeking therapy because we were all in that, you know, very chaotic moment. And then trying to force a labor. I don't want to get too graphic with it, but your body is not responding the way it's supposed to be responding. And in turn, they said, Mariah, they told my husband and my mom, prepare for extreme disaster. Her body is not responding. Things are about to turn left quickly.
Yeah.
I was out, so I didn't know any of this.
Right.
Then when I woke up, like I said, I was blind. I couldn't see. Nobody knows that. I was blind for like a week. I could only see like out of certain areas of my eye. So preeclampsia is a lasting thing. And if you got it in your first pregnancy, your chances to get it for every other pregnancy
higher.
are increased. Yep.
Yeah.
So many people don't know that either. And later in life, you might develop chronic hypertension, chronic blood pressure issues. So there's a lot, but I'll have all of this information at this link at click2houston.com.
And aside from the mental, or aside from the physical layers here, of course, it has a lasting impact on our mental health too.
Forever.
Okay. Well, we so much appreciate you coming on and sharing this story with us this morning.
Thank
you,
you.
Mariah. The time now is 8:49. We'll be right back.